Hello, everyone. My name is Oscar Sanchez, and what is cognition and why is it important?
Well, let me tell you.
Cognition has to do with the behavior expressed with information you receive from your environment or life experience, and many animals, including birds, have this ability. If you were a bird with great cognitive skills, like a crow, for example, you will most likely be able to take in information, be able to process, remember, and use that information as an advantage in your environment. Please enjoy these pied imperial pigeons taking a nice cognitive bath together. As a bird, having a good cognitive ability will allow for the remembrance of important details like where the nest might be in an ocean or forest. However, cognition really shines when Oh, when more when cognition in birds really shines when they are forced to face the pressures in this ever-changing environment called Earth. It is critical that birds innovate to bypass selective pressures, including introduction to new predators, constant temperature fluctuations, land rearrangements over time, and especially food source availability.
Hi everyone, this is Samara, and I'll be going over why birds aren't dumb in their memory.
We've all heard the phrase bird brain, something that was usually shouted when someone did something dumb or forgot something. Although their brains may be small and much less wrinkly than ours, studies have revealed that our avian friends are quite bright. You may have heard of New York's pigeons being referred to as flying rats, as they commonly crowd the streets and scavenge food. Well, it turns out our little friends have been used in recognizing images of benign and malignant tumors for breast cancer, as stated in Five Species That Show Why Bird Brain is a Stupid Phrase by Zara Selinsky, where they turned out to be just as good as humans. And it's not just pigeons that were shown to be so bright. Chickens have been shown to be able to do basic addition and subtraction, as well as demonstrate behavior that they think before they act. Meanwhile, crows have been known to solve various puzzles in this particular study, a string puzzle on their first try, so perhaps it's time to retire the phrase bird brain and instead consider it a compliment when compared to our clever avian friends.
My name is Annalise, and I'm going to talk about problem solving in birds. One of the most obvious signs of cognition in birds is the ability to problem solve. This clearly demonstrates intent past the reaction phase and showcases that birds are actively analyzing their situations and reacting accordingly to achieve whatever goal they are looking for. Studies were done with Kias and New Caledonian crows, where researchers had set up food rewards for the birds if they managed to solve different mechanical puzzles as part of a larger multi-axis box, or MAB for short. This study found that both species could solve all parts of the puzzle box using their observation, active learning, and their own unique skills. One of the major highlights from this study was how both birds found alternative ways to solve the same problem, which better matched their natural skill set. This is critical because it shows that these birds can adapt and find alternative ways to obtain resources for their essential needs. In nature, having this ability can be the determining factor of life or death in specific situations. As the environments across the world constantly shift because of climate change and other outside variables, problem solving becomes an increasingly critical skill to sustain and develop. Birds are able to properly innovate and develop foraging techniques to help them survive. An example of this is from a study done with great-tailed grackles, where the birds learned to drop heavy objects into water to make it rise, so that they could retrieve a treat floating on the surface. This shows they understand water displacement, along with basic cause and effect relationships. In the next test, scientists took away those heavy objects, leaving only the lighter objects behind, and the grackles learned to use those instead, showing a level of behavioral flexibility. This helps them to quickly adapt to changing environments, allowing them to better survive and thrive during difficult times where their normal resources may be more scarce and they may have to find alternatives. Interestingly, there have also been cases showing better cognitive flexibility in birds living in human-altered environments, due to the constant change occurring in those habitats. One example of this follows a story of how a raven tricked a man's dogs into leaving the backyard by playing with the fence gate lock. Once the dogs walked towards the noise, the raven snuck in, stole the dog food, and flew away. However, adapting to these environments can come at a cost, as urban populations may experience reduced genetic diversity due to isolation and smaller population sizes. Overall, birds are very well-rounded, because not only can they fly, but they also have the ability to analyze their environment, adjust to shifting food sources, and respond to predator introductions. Using their ability to problem solve, birds can read their environment even when the land itself is changing, and they do their best to change with it to better survive.
Just as birds can adjust their mechanics of flight to better adapt to the weather, they can also flexibly adapt their behavior as their environment changes in order to navigate complex situations and thrive. In the study, long-term memory of experienced jays facilitates problem-solving by naive group members in the wild, by Haiyan Zhou et al., states how longer-term memory can be demanding energy-wise, so the trade-off has to be worth it. A specific example they provide is the Corvidae and Paridae families and how they navigate seasonal shifts in their environment by stockpiling food items when they are easy to find. This mechanism allows these birds to be successful in ever-changing environments as they're able to recall conditions from previous years that contributed to their survival and fitness. The African gray parrot has been thoroughly studied and was found to demonstrate complex cognitive abilities to help them manage their long lifespans in social and ecological environments. Most famously, the parrot Alex, referenced in Mathematical Abilities of an African Gray Parrot by Mary Hunter, was able to identify over 100 objects, multiple colors, and shapes, while also being able to answer category questions on size, material, and number. A unique example of birds' memory ability can be found in cowbirds. Since they don't build nests, they have no find, evaluate, and time the parasitism of the host nests. In the article, The Cognitive Architecture of Brood Parasitism in Cowbirds by David J. White, cowbirds are able to determine which nests are viable and when to lay their eggs for maximum fitness. They also appear to use episodic-like memory to be able to recall what, where, when information, such as when the nest was found, where it was, and when the host will begin laying. Thus let cowbirds avoid random laying and instead use a more precise reproductive strategy. Birds are also able to use their cognitive ability to gain an adaptive advantage in changing environments. This has been seen in Clark's Nutcracker, where they've catched between 22,000 and 33,000 seeds across thousands of locations in a single autumn, as stated by Bednikoff and Balda, 2014. These birds can be found in alpine environments where snow and rock slides can obscure landmarks, making them rely on large, stable structural cues. In Mexican jays, experienced group members are able to retain memory of foraging for nearly 4 years. This long-term memory is able to facilitate social learning, as naive group members can observe and copy the successful behavior of veterans to access new resources.
So on to me, Landon Burchell. I will be going over tool use. So let's get into tools. So why does it matter? What's the big deal with using tools? Tools are thought to be unique to humans, but this has been seen in other species. The ability to use tools was thought to be a unique thing to humans, and it showed that we had a higher level of cognition and that we're so-called a chosen or unique species as a whole. But this has been seen in other species like avians. Our friendly birds are able to use tools to gain a higher access to different food sources, or even an edge in their overall environment. So let's look at a common example, crows. We all love crows. Crows are everywhere. And one such example of crows using tools is sticks. They're able to use sticks to scoop out beetle larvae, as seen in this video, and it gains access to higher, more rich diet of proteins and lipids. And they're not the only species that are known to use these tools, as explained in Outsburg et al. 2011. Kia are another species. Kia are able to use tools to gain advantage in foraging and their overall fitness. But the unique thing about Kia is that they have a curved beak, so they have to develop a 4-step motor routine process to be able to hold the stick. But they're very curious with it, and they'll use tools and understand basic motions of, as seen in this video, to cut down the edge of the stick, to poke it through to get the nut, or drop different objects into, let's say, like a little puzzle to knock one thing over to unlock it to get the food. It's very unique, the ability to use tools. So overall, the advantages for using tools for avians gives them not only higher access to food, enhanced survival, but it also acts as a buffer in a sense. It reduces the risk of injury when the tool is being used rather than their own limbs. And overall, with looking at these large scale research studies, it's shown the ability to be creative or innovative shows an increase in colonization success and a reduction in extinction risks. These certain avians have increased neuron numbers, which has been thought or has been associated with higher cognitive functions. It gives hints about exactly what gives avians like cheetahs and crows are higher levels of cognition, as explained in Audit et al. In 2024. It may even give hints to our evolutionary history and may even unlock some of the keys to explaining what consciousness is. So where does this leave us with the future of studying avian intelligence? One direction can be taken is studying specifically how bird brains work, especially with structures like pallian neurons. What are specific about pallian neurons? Why do they act the way they do? Are these the tools behind understanding behaviors like problem solving, memory, and tool use? And how birds can adapt rapidly to changing environments? Why do some birds display these patterns while others don't? This is another really big area to answer those really hard hitting questions. Another key direction is comparing this level of cognition in avians to mammals. And this could really help us reshape and redefine how we view intelligence, even consciousness in non human species. And with all this, taking in the impact, it really taught me an interesting thing about this topic about how flexible and how smart birds actually are. I was really surprised to learn about crows and kea don't just use tools, but they have different morphological and physical limitations, but they're able to overcome those in real times. And it's not just an instinct for them, it's a real time problem solving mechanism that they have developed. Overall, I think studying avian intelligence doesn't just teach us about birds, but also helps us better understand intelligence itself.
While researching for this project, one thing I found interesting was that great-tailed grackles are a uniquely adaptive species of bird able to thrive in all sorts of environments.
Something that I found really cool when researching this topic was how many birds were able to perform puzzle solving skills, which I thought would have been limited to more species, but I was surprised to find out crows were included as well as gray parrots and chickens, which I didn't think, so that was pretty neat.
Avian cognition is a fascinating topic to research. From birds being able to weave baskets out of simple material from the nature to different areas of the brain showing signs of activity. There are many routes to take with research of avian cognition. And one thing that I'm particularly interested about is actually the patterns in which birds can see from a bird's eye view that we humans cannot fully understand yet. In the end, birds are the best.